Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo Casalemas, and today I'm going to be doing a presentation on my research paper, which is on the effects of social media censorship on political and social outcomes. Here's the abstract to my paper. In addition to seeing political and social outcomes, we'll also be doing an ethical analysis and exploring the global impact of social media censorship. Let's get started with introducing social media and social media censorship and my paper. So, the rise of and impact of social media on our planet cannot be overstated. It's been maybe one of the top three most important developments of the 21st century. Because of this, because of the impact of social media, obviously social media censorship is going to have a significant impact as well on a country's culture and population. In my paper, section 2 is going to present a background of social media and social media censorship. Sections 3, 4, and 5 are going to discuss different approaches to social media censorship throughout the world. In my paper, we discuss China, Germany, and the United States of America. Section 6 is going to present an ethical analysis of these three separate approaches. And Section 7 is going to present a short conclusion. In Section 2, we're going to talk about the background and significance of social media. It's hard, like I said, to overstate the impact and the ubiquity of social media on our world. There are over 4.54 billion internet users in the world, more than 1 in 2 people, and over 75% of those people are on social media. If you're in a first world country, or actually nearly any country in the world, if you see a person on the street, chances are they are on social media. This has had a huge impact, obviously. Free speech expands the views of a country. We dub this the Overton window, which is the range of acceptable views of the majority of the people in a country. And free speech expands this because it allows more people to introduce their views. Now, social media multiplies this effect because the fringe parts of the Overton window, the more extreme views on the right or left on the political spectrum, find other people that share their views, find a voice, and are heard more loudly because of social media. This has the effect of extremely expanding the Overton window, and the impact of this can be seen on politics. In the United States, for example, we've had the rise of candidates far more on the left and far more on the right of this Overton window of this political spectrum. And this has included on the left candidates that we would never have seen before, such as Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. On the right, we have Donald Trump, and we also have far more far right politicians on a local and state level. Well, because social media is so ubiquitous, social media censorship is also extremely impactful as well. We're going to explore how a country like China, a country like Germany, and a country like USA have differing styles of social media censorship occurring in their country. So let's start with China. China is a very authoritarian country. On the three that we analyzed, by far the most authoritarian. And we'll talk about the state of social media censorship in China. So in the United States, we have Facebook, we have Reddit, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. In China, excuse my pronunciation, they have Weibo, Baidu, QQ, Youku, and WeChat. The difference between our platforms and theirs, China has complete and utter control of all the information and what's going on these social media platforms. They use this information to create a blacklist of topics that are not allowed to be discussed in China, and they patrol social media regularly to make sure that these topics are not being discussed. In addition to this, because there are consequences to discussing anti-governmental and other topics in China, the Chinese citizen is far more likely to self-censor or not speak out something on their mind if it may may be construed as anti-government or as illegal in China. What are the effects of this censorship on social media? There's very little political dissidence and governmental opposition in China, and a far more sinister effect is the effects on the individual. Chan and Yang did a study on the effects that social media censorship and censorship in general has had on the individual in China. They took a group of Chinese citizens, and one of the groups of Chinese students was was allowed to bypass the Chinese firewall and explore additional news sources and information outside of China. And unless they were encouraged or incentivized, they really didn't go out and explore this. They didn't expand their knowledge base. And and this is due to the strict regulations in China, strict social media censorship, that the average student would not go out and learn more if the information is outside of a Chinese source. The effect that this has had on the Overton window, of course, is to shrink it severely. There's a very small range of acceptable views in China, and because of this, a very small range of political and social outcomes. In Germany, it's a far less authoritarian country. However, social media censorship still occurs at the governmental level. Almost all free speech is allowed, but anything that includes hate speech or Holocaust denial is prohibited. And in fact, Germany passed the Network Enforcement Act, which forces social media platforms to delete any hateful or illegal speech within 24 hours or face consequences. This becomes a blend of private and public censorship because the responsibility to block this speech is on the social media platforms, but they must abide by public laws, public rules, and regulations. Because of this, social media platforms are far more likely to overinterpret these rules and regulations because they fear the consequences and block far more than the opposite, which then they block too little. The effects that this has on the Overton window, of course, it's still going to be far more expanded than a more authoritarian country, and because they have a lot more free speech. But it's still going to be somewhat restricted on the edges just because they're blocking hate speech, which tends to occur at the more extreme ends of acceptable views. And we might see that hate speech tends to occur more on the far right end of the spectrum. So the Overton window might slightly be tilted to the left. Or these far right people who are maybe more unfairly blocked or more targeted for hate speech blocking may be empowered as well. This obviously has the effect of allowing more leftist social and political outcomes as well in Germany. In the United States, however, it's very different. The government in the United States has almost no social media censorship rules. They allow almost all free speech as long as it's not inciting violence. This means that social media censorship still occurs, but it only occurs at the private level, according to the specific social media platforms' rules and regulations. Some people have complained that this targets the political right more often, that the left is allowed to have more free speech on these platforms. This can be seen with the blocking and censoring of targets such as Charles Johnson, Alex Jones, and more recently Donald Trump. However, there is at least one Democratic candidate which has complained of censorship, and that is Tulsi Gabbard. Um, what are the effects of this social media censorship? The Overton window, it's hard to quantify exactly, but we would say that the Overton window is, of course, extremely expanded due to the lack of total social media censorship. However, we may say that theoretically it should tilt more to the left because the political right seems to be targeted more frequently for the censorship. However, it's hard to quantify that, and it's hard to say that the right side of the Overton window has not been has been censored and not empowered by the censorship. And you can see that with the rise of a candidate like Donald Trump to become president. So let's perform an ethical analysis of all three of these kinds of social media censorship. So we're going to perform this ethical analysis in regards to basic human rights. We consider freedom of speech a basic human right, and if a country violates a basic human right without sufficiently persuasive motive, that country's method is unethical. We'll start with China. China violates freedom of speech on a lot of levels, including social media censorship, and their motive is to prevent governmental opposition. This, according to our analysis, this is not a sufficiently persuasive motive, and China's method of social media censorship is unethical. Germany, on the other hand, only blocks freedom of speech in regards to hate speech and illegal actions. However, because they put the responsibility on the social media platform to do this, and they don't, and because the social media platform is more likely to block more rather than less, we would still consider that their motive is not they don't their motive is not sufficiently persuasive to violate the basic human right of freedom of speech, and we would consider their method unethical as well. The United States, on the other hand, as far as allowing free speech, are completely ethical. They have almost no governmental opposition except preventing violence to their free speech, to restricting free speech. However, some people would argue, the White House has a petition for this, that the government should step in and prevent social media platforms from blocking any kind of speech. And some would argue that if they did that, it would be blocking the social media platform's right to free speech to prevent any kind of information they want on their platform. So, in regards to that, it's harder to say whether the government is acting ethically or unethically. That concludes our presentation on my research paper. We went over the impact and the ubiquity of social media on a global scale. We went over the different methods of social media censorship in China, Germany, and the United States, and we performed an ethical analysis of these three different methods. Thank you. Here are my references.